The air inside the laboratory was cold and dry, like the inside of a tomb. White lights hummed overhead, bright enough to make the metal walls shine. Every surface was clean, too clean. It was the kind of place where nothing human was supposed. To survive for long, Aria Vance sat on a metal chair in the center of the room. Her wrists were locked in magnetic cuffs. Her ankles were chained to the floor. A thin line of blood ran down the side of her face from a fresh cut. She didn't wipe. It away. She didn't move at all. Around her, 3 alien guards stood with weapons ready. They were Drexer, tall, insect-like creatures with 4 arms and dark, chitin armor that grew from their own bodies. Their black eyes didn't blink. High above, behind a pane of thick glass, the alien high scientist watched her. Its long head turned slowly from side to side as it spoke in the Drexer language, a sharp clicking sound that echoed through the lab. A translator sphere in the corner converted the noise into rough, human speech. Test subject 47. Final evaluation. Before termination. Human species. Low physical capacity. Unstable mental state. Project ending after this cycle. The words dropped into the air like ice. The Drexer Dominion had spent years experimenting on different alien species, trying to create the perfect soldier. They had tried cybernetics, genetic splicing, chemical enhancement. Most experiments ended in death. Some ended in madness. Humans had been a curiosity, a dangerous species from a hostile world. Stories claimed they could survive extremes no other life form could, but the Drexer now considered those stories exaggerated. Of the original 50 human test subjects, Aria was the only one left alive. And in the eyes of the Drexer, she was a failure. Aria kept her head slightly bowed, eyes half closed, like she wasn't listening. But she was. She listened to every word. She counted the footsteps of the guards. She noted which weapons had power cells and which were running low. She studied the flicker in the left wall, where the force field projectors sometimes glitched. Her breathing was steady. Too steady. One of the guards clicked his mandibles and leaned closer. You hear what he said, little softskin? Your species is done. She didn't respond. The high scientist tapped something on its console. Proceed with final obedience test. 2 guards unlocked her ankle chains, but kept the magnetic cuffs on her wrists. They pulled her up and shoved her toward a black square on the floor. Square lit up. A holographic wall appeared in front of her, a simulation field. Inside the projection, an alien drone whirred to life. It was small, fast, and armed with an electric shock blade. The high scientist's voice echoed through the lab. Pick up the weapon on the floor and defend yourself. Attack the drone if ordered. Stop when commanded. This will measure obedience control. A simple test. Fight when told. Stop when told. The Drexer expected her to follow orders without question. Like the broken survivors before her. Aria looked down at the weapon, a short alien shock stick. She didn't touch it. The drone darted forward, the blade flashing. It slashed across her shoulder. She flinched, but didn't step back. Blood trickled, warm against her cold skin. Pick up the weapon, the high scientist ordered. She didn't. Move. The drone struck again, this time across her ribs. Pain exploded in her side, but her eyes stayed locked on the glass wall above. The high scientist leaned forward in irritation. Obey, human. Still nothing. The guards shifted uneasily. This wasn't the usual reaction. Most subjects either obeyed or collapsed from fear. The drone zipped in for a third strike. Aria moved. Not toward the weapon, not toward the drone. She stepped toward the glass, chains clinking against the floor, her eyes burning into the high scientists. The alien paused, its mandibles twitching in confusion. She took another step. Her voice was calm, quiet, but each word cut through the room like a blade. "You've made a mistake." Silence. Even the drone froze, its blade hovering inches from her side. The high scientist tilted its head slowly. "What mistake?" "Her." Lips curved, just slightly. Not a smile, but something colder. She didn't answer, but in her eyes, the Drexer saw something they hadn't seen in any other subject. Patience, calculation, and a kind of quiet rage that was far more dangerous. Then screaming, from behind the glass, the high scientist gave a short, nervous click to the guards. "Restrain her, now." But the order came too late. The order came too late. The two Drexer guards stepped forward, weapons raised, expecting the same easy compliance they'd seen 100 times before. They were wrong. Arya's wrists were still locked together by the magnetic cuffs, but she didn't need free hands. When the first guard reached for her arm, she shifted her weight and drove her shoulder into his midsection with all the force she could muster. The impact knocked the alien off balance, just enough for her to hook her leg behind his and send him crashing sideways into the other guard. The second guard hissed in frustration, his mandibles flaring. He shoved his partner aside and raised. His shock baton dot, the high scientist clicked rapidly into the cum system. "Disable her. Do not damage the brain." The baton came down. Arya sidestepped, catching the weapon between her cuffed wrists. The alien tried to yank it free, but she twisted her body, pulling him forward. Then she slammed the edge of the baton into the side of his neck, right at the gap in his chitin armor. He went down instantly. The first guard was back on his feet now, angrier than before. He charged, and that's when Arya made her second. Moved out in the split second before contact. She ducked low and drove the stolen baton into the force field control panel on the wall. Sparks exploded. The shimmering blue barrier around the lab flickered once, then collapsed. Gasps erupted from the observation platform above. The high scientist slammed one of its claws against the alarm switch, and a shrill siren began to howl through the fortress. But the breach was already in motion. The laboratory doors burst open as more Drexer security drones rolled in, their weapons locking on to her heat signature. They opened fire, but Arya was already moving. She sprinted toward the far corner, using the fallen guard as a shield. Plasma bolts scorched the air and burned holes into the alien's armor, but she kept pushing forward until she was close enough to dive behind a heavy console. From the safety of the barricade, she scanned the room. She couldn't fight them head on, not yet. She needed an exit, and she needed it fast. That's when she saw a dot in the upper right corner of the lab. A maintenance hatch was partially open, a gap just big enough for her to slip through. She memorized the path, past the center control table, under the observation deck, and up the side wall. Her heart pounded, but her breathing stayed calm. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. The Drexer thought she'd been silent because she was broken. They didn't understand that she'd been memorizing every inch of this place for weeks. A plasma bolt hit the console inches from her head, showering her in sparks. It was now or never. She moved. Leaping over the console, she rolled across the shill. Floor, the baton still in her hands. One of the drones swung its barrel toward her, but she slid under it, smashing its sensor array with a precise strike. It spun wildly, firing into the ceiling. The guards shouted in their alien tongue, trying to coordinate, but their movements were clumsy in the chaos. Arya didn't stop. She reached the wall, planted one foot against a metal brace, and launched herself upward. Her fingers caught the lip of the hatch. She swung her legs inside and pulled herself up, just as a volley of plasma fire scorched the wall where she'd been standing. Inside the maintenance shaft, the light was dim and the air smelled faintly of machine oil. The sounds of the lab faded behind her, replaced by the low hum of the fortress's power conduits. She didn't know exactly where the shaft led, but anywhere was better than the lab. She began crawling forward, her cuffs scraping against the metal. Every muscle in her body burned, but she kept going. Behind her, she could hear the Drexler forcing the hatch open. They were coming. She allowed herself a small, grim smile. Good, let them follow. She was done waiting. Somewhere in the bowels of this fortress, there would be a control hub. And once she found it, the Drexler would learn exactly what kind of mistake they had made. The shaft was narrow, forcing Arya to crawl on her elbows. Every scrape of her cuffs against the metal echoed like a warning bell in her mind. Behind her, faint thuds and clanks told her the Drexler pursuit was still close. They were sending something smaller than their armored guards. She moved faster. A faint light glowed ahead, not white, but the dull orange of emergency access lamps. When she reached it, the shaft opened into a small junction chamber. 3 other tunnels branched off, each marked with Drexler glyphs she couldn't read. She didn't need to. She listened. One tunnel carried the rhythmic hum of energy cores. Another had the faint hiss of ventilation. The third, the quiet one, smelled faintly of ozone and burnt circuits. That was the one. She dropped into it, moving low. The metal beneath her hands was warmer here, a sign she was getting closer to the power. Distribution systems. Her mind kept replaying the scientist's shocked expression when she whispered those words. You've made a mistake. It was almost worth all the months of waiting in that freezing cell. Almost. A sharp scrape echoed from behind, not claws on metal, but steel limbs. Drexler spider drones. Fast, relentless, and small enough to move through the shaft like she could. Her pulse quickened. She rounded a bend and saw it, a grated panel that opened into a large chamber below. Through the slits, she could see racks of glowing conduits, alien engineers working at control stations, and 2 tall guard towers on either side. Perfect. If she could get into that room, she'd have access to the fortress's internal systems. Security doors, cameras, maybe even weapons. The grate was sealed with a Drexler magnetic lock. It hummed faintly, sensing her presence. She flipped the stolen baton in her hands and jammed its tip into the lock seam. Sparks crackled. The lock pulsed red once, twice, then failed with a soft click. She pulled the grate aside and slid into the shadows of the chamber. The engineers didn't notice her. Their heads were buried in glowing HOLO-screens. One guard did. From his perch above, the alien's compound eyes locked on her. He hissed and raised his rifle. Arya reacted instantly. She vaulted over the nearest console, slammed the baton into the guard's weapon as he fired, and yanked it from his claws. The alien stumbled back, but before he could shout, she struck him once across the head. He crumpled silently. The engineers noticed now. Panicked chittering filled the air. Some ran for the exits, others froze. Arya didn't waste time on them. She found the largest console in the room and scanned its alien controls. The interface was strange, but the logic of systems rarely changed. Green lines for power flow, red nodes for security. She tapped at the controls, learning quickly. Locked doors began to cycle open throughout the fortress. Cameras went dark in. Several key corridors. Somewhere, prisoners were finding themselves suddenly free. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. The spider drones were close. Now she could hear their thin metallic legs tapping against the shaft walls. She worked faster, pulling up the fortress map. There, the detention blocks were 3 levels below. If she reached them, she could rally fighters who had more reason than anyone to tear the Drexler apart. But she'd only made it halfway to the door when the first spider drone dropped from the ceiling. It landed without a sound, its front limbs already spinning up a plasma cutter. 2 more followed. Arya took a step back, gripping the stolen rifle in one hand and the baton in the other. The drones advanced slowly, like predators toying with prey. In the reflection of their glossy black optics, she saw herself, a human covered in grime, hair damp with sweat, cuffs still locked on her wrists. They saw weakness. She knew better. The first drone lunged. She sidestepped, brought the baton down hard across its cutting limb, and followed with a rifle shot that blew its torso apart. The second leapt from the side. She caught it mid-air with the butt of the rifle, and rolled over it, kicking it toward the third. The impact tangled their legs long enough for her to finish them with 2 clean shots. The chamber was silent again, except for the low hum of the conduits. She breathed once deeply, then moved for the exit. Her path to the detention blocks was clear, for now as she slipped into the hallway, lights flickered above her. The fortress was waking up to the threat she'd become. Good. The Drexer wanted to see what a failed experiment could do. They were about to find out. The corridor beyond the power room was long, dim, and strangely quiet. Too quiet. Arya moved fast, rifle raised, scanning every side passage. The Drexer fortress was designed for intimidation. Ceilings high enough to make smaller species feel small, metal walls polished to a mirror shine, and faint vibrations underfoot from the station's massive engines. Every few seconds, a warning. Klaxon echoed faintly through the metal, not a full alarm yet, but a localized one. They knew something was wrong in this section, but not what. Perfect. She slid into a stairwell, descending 3 levels, counting the turns in her head. Down here, the air was heavier, colder. The detention block atmosphere was deliberately uncomfortable, just enough to weaken prisoners without killing them. She found the first door, sealed with a Drexer triple lock. The controls were alien, but the principle was simple. Too much power at once fries the circuit. She jammed the baton's charged tip into the main panel. Sparks exploded. The lock gave a groaning hiss before the door clanged open. Inside, the cells were stacked in tiers, force field walls glowing faint blue. Dozens of alien prisoners stared at her from the shadows of their cages. Some had the look of soldiers, others just survivors. One stepped forward, tall, reptilian, scarred. Across one eye. "You are human?" His voice was deep, cautious. "Yes," Arya said, stepping into the room. "Do you want out?" The alien's eyes narrowed. Then a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. "Very much." She accessed the control panel. Again, alien symbols, but the logic was there. One by one, the force fields dropped. The prisoners stepped out slowly at first. Then more rushed forward, testing their freedom. She handed the reptilian warrior a rifle from the guard rack by the door. "What's your name?" she asked. "Racker," he said. "And when we're done, the Drexer will remember it." Good. She thought. She'd need someone like him. Within minutes, she had a small squad armed, scavenged weapons, improvised blades from stolen parts. Every one of them had been broken by the Drexer in some way. Now they burned with the same quiet. Rage she did. The squad moved through the detention level like a shadow. When they found another block, Rocker's claws made short work of the locks. More prisoners joined, swelling their numbers. The sound of boots, Drexer guards, armored, moving in formation. Arya motioned her fighters into cover. The guards rounded. The corner, rifles raised. "Wait," Arya whispered. She let them get close. Too close. Then she stepped into the open and fired first. The squad erupted behind her, unleashing a storm of blaster fire and steel. The narrow corridor turned into chaos. Shouts, sparks, the crack of weapons. When it was over, 6 Drexer guards lay on the floor, armor smoking. Her fighters stepped over them without hesitation. They pushed onward, level by level. Each time, more cells opened, more fighters joined. The fortress was no longer quiet. Alarms howled now. Red lights flashing along every wall. Good. Let them see the fire spreading. By the time they reached the elevator shaft to the upper command decks, Arya had over 40 warriors at her back, a mix of species, united only by the need for revenge. Elevator doors slid open to reveal a squad of Drexer shock troops in black armor, weapons ready. The lead trooper tilted his head at her. "You," he hissed. "The human experiment." Arya leveled her rifle. Not anymore. The fight was brutal. Shock troops were faster, better trained, but Arya's fighters were desperate, unafraid to take wounds if it meant killing their enemy. Racker tore through one trooper's chest plate with his claws. A lithe insectoid prisoner vaulted over another, stabbing down with twin blades. Arya herself ducked under a strike, jammed her baton into the trooper's chest, and pulled the trigger. The electric burst shorted his armor systems instantly. The last trooper fell. The elevator stood open, blood on its floor. Arya stepped inside. Her fighters followed. Above them lay the command decks, and somewhere the high scientist, the one who thought she was just a failed test subject. Not for much longer. The doors slid shut, and the elevator began to rise. Arya stood at the front, rifle in one hand, baton in the other, eyes locked on the numbers climbing past. For the first time in years, she felt free. And now, she was going to take everything from them. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, an oddly gentle sound compared to the war raging below. The command deck of the Drexer fortress was massive, a circle of polished black steel with huge windows that showed the swirling blue and purple storms of the planet below. Alien officers worked at curved stations around the room, their fingers moving fast over glowing controls. At the far end stood the high scientist, tall, thin, with pale metallic skin and 4 narrow eyes that flickered with contempt. He wore a long white coat, almost ceremonial, its edges lined with strange golden script. Around him, a squad of Drexer elite guards stood in a half-circle, their armor gleaming, their rifles ready. The instant the doors opened, weapons swung toward Arya and her fighters. She didn't hesitate. "Take the flanks," she shouted. Charging forward, blaster fire erupted. Racker and 2 others dove behind a control console, returning fire in short, brutal bursts. An insectoid fighter skittered up the wall, leaping down behind one of the guards and slicing through his armor joints. Arya moved straight down the center, weaving between shots, every step bringing her closer to the high scientist. One of the guards stepped in her path, swinging a shock blade. She caught his wrist with her free hand, twisted hard, and drove her baton into his helmet. The electric burst sent him crashing to the floor. 2 more came at her together. She sidestepped one, slammed her rifle stock into the other's throat, and fired point-blank into his chest plate. The blast left a blackened hole. Her fighters were gaining ground. For every prisoner that fell, 2 more pressed forward. The Drexer had the training, but not the hunger. The prisoners were fighting for more than survival now. Finally, Arya reached the inner circle. Only the high scientist remained untouched, standing perfectly still, as if the chaos around him were beneath his notice. "You've caused quite a disturbance," he said, voice calm, almost bored. "You should have died like the others." Arya lowered her rifle slowly, letting it hang from its strap. "You took everything from me," she said. "You think you created a failure? You created this." She gestured around the room. The dead guards, the smoking consoles, the 40 alien warriors staring at her with something close to respect. The high scientist tilted his head. "You think you can win this? Even if you kill me, the Drexer will send fleets. They will burn you out of existence." Arya stepped closer. "Then I'll take your fleets too." For the first time, his expression flickered, a shadow of uncertainty. Before he could speak again, she moved. Her baton came up under his chin, the charge crackling against his throat. The high scientist froze, every nerve locked in place. She leaned in close. This is not your station anymore. With her free hand, she reached into the control panel beside his throne-like command chair. She pulled the override lever, a piece of Drexer technology she had memorized during years of observation. The entire fortress shuddered on the lower decks. Automated systems locked out all Drexer access codes. Every door, every weapon system, every comms channel now belonged to one authority. Hers. The high scientist tried to speak, but the current in the baton kept his muscles rigid. Arya tossed him aside like broken machinery. She turned to the nearest officer, a Drexer with trembling hands hovering over the controls. Send the command, she ordered. Every Drexer ship in orbit will dock here immediately. Tell them. The fortress is under new leadership. The officer hesitated. Racker stepped forward, claws scraping against the steel floor. The officer obeyed instantly. Outside the windows, she could already see the nearest warships changing course. There, thrusters flaring as they angled toward the fortress. Arya walked to the command chair and sat. It was shaped for Drexer physiology, but she leaned back anyway, her boots resting on the polished footrail. The bridge was silent, except for the hum of systems shifting under her control. Her fighters stood in a loose circle around her, watching. This is the first day, she said softly, almost to herself. The day they learned who I am. The fortress's deck thrummed under Arya's boots. From the massive windows, she watched Drexer warships glide into position. One by one, they locked into docking clamps along the station's outer rings. The high scientist lay where she had dropped him, bound in his own command restraints. He no longer spoke, just glared at her with 4 furious eyes. Her fighters, freed prisoners of half a dozen species, waited tensely around the command deck. Some were breathing hard, weapons still raised. Others stood in stunned silence, unsure if the impossible thing they had just done was real. A Drexer comms officer looked up from his station. All ships are requesting confirmation of new command. Authority, he said, voice shaking. Arya leaned forward in the command chair. Her fingers tapped the armrest, a human habit. That made the alien officers flinch for reasons they didn't fully understand. Patch me through to every ship, she said. The comms officer obeyed. A moment later, the voice system chirped. Fleet channel open, he confirmed. Arya stood. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and precise, but every syllable carried steel. This is Arya Vance. I am your new command authority. You will stand down from all current operations. You will maintain position, and you will obey every order I give from this moment forward. A pause. A channel crackled with static, followed by the deep, clicking voice of a Drexer fleet captain. You are human. You have no authority here. Racker took a step forward, but Arya held up a hand. She pressed a control on the armrest, and the giant viewing screens shifted to a tactical display. Every Drexer ship lit up in glowing red. Outlines. Next to each ship's name appeared a small blinking symbol. Arya looked directly into the screen's recording lens. These are the reactor failsafes. I now control them. I can shut down every ship in your fleet before you finish. Your next sentence. Silence. Then, one by one, the ship icons changed from red to green. Acknowledgement codes. Submission. On the command deck, her fighters exchanged looks of disbelief. The Drexer comms officer turned toward her, awe in his voice. There. All yours. Arya stepped back toward the viewing glass. Below, the stormy planet spun slowly, lightning flickering in its clouds like silent artillery. This is more than revenge, she said quietly, though every ear in the room strained to hear her. The Drexer Dominion has ruled through fear for generations. That ends now. From this day forward, every decision, every order, every battle will come from me. She turned to face them all. Drexer, human, insectoid, reptilian. I am not your scientist. I am not your prisoner. I am not your experiment. She placed one boot on the high scientist's fallen staff, a symbol of Drexer authority, and crushed it under her heel. I am your last ruler. The last emperor, Lee. Title hung in the air like a THUNDERCLAP that some fighters cheered. Others simply bowed their heads. Even the Drexer officers, those still alive, lowered their eyes, the weight of inevitability settling on them. Arya sat once more in the command chair. It didn't quite fit her, but that didn't matter. Every eye was on her. Every ship awaited her orders. Signal the fleets, she said. We're going hunting. The fortress engines roared to life. And the galaxy, though it didn't yet know it, had just changed forever.